And I suppose one of the best ways to do that is to lose yourself totally, which is what he then proceeded to do.
Robbie was becoming less interested in Take That and more interested in this, so he headed off to Glastonbury, and guess who he should meet? The Gallagher brothers, the baddest boys in Britpop. Whilst the rest of Take That were rehearsing for their forthcoming tour, Robbie was partying at Glastonbury, as captured in this exclusive footage by Tim Abbott, MD of the Gallagher's record company at the time.
We're interview partners now, that's it. I'm saying I'm going nowhere without no one, but that's it, man. I can't talk. Edit.
You got it. There's this guy with kind of peroxide hair, and we thought he was Freddie Starr, who's backstage, he was all that everywhere, and it was like, who's that guy with the peroxide hair, spiky hair? And it's like, oh, that's Rob Williams.
Robbie was desperately trying to befriend Oasis. But did Oasis feel the same? Tim's brother and partner Chris was also there.
I don't know if Liam and Robbie were that close ever, really. I think that it was something that the media really sort of made up.
And here's the encore, all kicking in a Take That member. Right, I admire that.
When Oasis went on to play, Liam called the Robster on, and he did the famous kind of duck walk on stage.
To many, Robbie's Britpop looked like Twitpop. But Liam and Robbie's media friendship soon soured, ending with Liam stealing Robbie's former fiancée.
We've said goodbye, the taxi cabins.
After this lost weekend, Robbie decided he was going to leave Take That after the next tour. He gave the boys his notice, and in response they gave him his P45.
I mean, I think he feels that he was pushed, but he would have gone anyway.
They came in to me at rehearsal one day and said, not dictating to us when you leave, you can go now. So the actual decision was made by them, not me.
Robbie's departure marked the beginning of the end for Take That. They even set up a helpline for his distraught fans.
When he left, you know, we were trying to cover his leads, all his songs and everything like that. And I think when we looked at the show, that was the bit that I went, it's a shame, you know, that was his bit.
After 5 years of hard work, Robbie walked away from Take That with an estimated £5 million. Not bad for a 21-year-old. Free from the Take That schedule, Robbie took some time off. He spent his cash on having a good time and lived his teenage years all over again. Robbie fled back to his mum's in Stoke, which is where he started forking out on his personal security. It was on this property that Robbie started to spend his Take That cash, keeping the fans away from his mum's house. As you can see from the sign, security was now an issue. Despite the money spent on security gates, it wasn't secure enough. After 2 years, Robbie bought his mum a new house, Fort Williams Mark I, but a year later they had to move on again. Up this mile-long driveway is the second house Robbie Williams bought for his mum. In 1999 it cost £1 million. Now this is the nearest you can get to it, and this time security's been stepped up so much there's even a moat. Hardly rock and roll still living at home, but by playing the property market, Robbie's made an estimated £1 million on his mum's homes, bringing his total worth to £6 million. As Robbie took care of things at home, Mum was searching for a new manager and found Kevin Kinsella.
I don't think Robbie was in the business for money per se. He was in it for the glamour, for the hype, for everything else. But money is very important to him, driven by his mother.
Well, my mum said it'd be really uncouth of me to talk about money.
He was quite wealthy for a 20, 21-year-old boy. And what was he into? He was into Charlie and vodka. And that was it.
And it was Kevin's responsibility to let the world know Robbie was still in business and ready to start work again.
I wrote this letter that Robbie wrote to his fans and signed, and that appeared on the front of the Sun paper. We worked on the image that he's alive well and he would be able to continue his career.
Not a career in pop though. He was still trying to get out of his Take That contract with BMG, so he took up the offer of this 7-Up campaign to tide him over.
And so he stood in line with these birds, and his arse was as good as any of the others. Fabulous. And then 10 days later, they turned it around. There was Robbie right in the middle of the girls. Nobody had recognised it as Robbie. We were getting offers of every sort of thing, films, photo shoots, everything. But he wanted to be a rock singer. There was no ifs or buts. That's where he was going.
To get the rock and roll image, Kevin was not the man for the job. Robbie was still tied to BMG and his Take That deal. So he ditched Kevin and called upon his old friends from the Glastonbury weekend, top indie managers Tim and Chris Abbott.
One of our objectives was to replace the money he'd lost from leaving Take That. BMG didn't want to let him go. They were quite vindictive, I feel, against him at the time because they were trying to protect their interest. He was at loggerheads with Nigel Martin-Smith in the Take That camp. Did he leave? Was he pushed? And he was deemed as the troublemaker, and I think he killed their cash cow in a bit. Take That were an immensely successful band. Our argument was he doesn't write the songs and he's not the key vocalist, and why are you bothered if you've got Gary and Mark ready to go? And the other two guys.
BMG finally let Robbie go, freeing him of the Take That regime. But as always, there was a price to pay. With legal fees, an estimated £500,000. Gary Barlow's debut single was ready to go, so BMG released Robbie.
He had to pay what you call a leaving members clause, and essentially had to buy himself out of his contract. It's a bit like when a footballer wants to leave a club and his contract isn't up.
Robbie's new managers struck him a 3-album deal with EMI and gave him an £800,000 advance. He needed a strong comeback song to knock Gary off his #1 spot. He chose a track written by George Michael, who'd been through the same process himself. No, not that one. You're not in a boy band anymore, Robbie. You need the mature solo version.
I will not give you up. Gotta have some faith in my sound. It's the one good thing that I've got.
It was made in 5 days and out a week later. That generally doesn't tend to happen. That was we mixed it on a Saturday and they were cutting it on a Monday to be out the following Monday.
Gary Barlow's single went straight in at #1 and Robbie needed the same success to steal his thunder.
He was not around a huge amount of the time, not because he didn't want to be, I'm sure. They were shooting the video simultaneously while we were making the record.
But things didn't go to plan for Robbie.
Our highest new entry this week at #2 is Freedom by Robbie Williams. Still at #1 for the...
Or Gary, who was knocked off the #1 spot, not by Robbie, but a new pop sensation.
The Spice Girls.
I mean, the whole point of the record was to get to #1. We've signed Robbie Williams. This is the first single. It'll be #1 next week. That's what they were banking on.
Freedom was a fantastic success for him. I think around the world, in 17 territories, he was top 5. He had a couple of #1s. But he didn't get the #1 in Britain.
Well, I think as an entertainer, we were looking more for George Michael, and what we actually got was George Formby.
It bought them a bit of time while they could work out exactly what they wanted to do with him musically.
It was Chris who was trying to keep tabs on Robbie, spending his huge advance.
I remember buying him a Game Boy at an airport, and he would play it for about 3 or 4 hours non-stop, and then would just leave it behind somewhere and think nothing of it, so you'd have to go and get him another one where, oh, I've left that one sort of on the plane. It's like, Rob.
The Abbotts also had the job of ridding Robbie of his boy band image, but he was getting out of control.
He went to the right places, the right openings, and started going to too many, really.
Robbie made an estimated £50,000 from Freedom, but it was deemed a flop. Now his cocaine habit was taking him more towards rehab rather than rehashes of George Michael's solo career. It seemed Robbie's future was now playing cover versions at award ceremonies. But would he be able to maintain a solo career?
Nice to be back.